Hey everybody, I am back with some more of The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. In the last chapter that we read, all of the heirs were gathered together in the Theodoricus coffee shop and they were discussing whether or not they should share their clues. But the meeting was adjourned due to a panic. So let's get into it and see what caused that panic. Chapter 12, The First Bomb. It was so sudden. The ear-splitting bangs, the screams, the confusion. Theo and Doug ran into the kitchen. Mrs. Theodoricus ran out. Her hair, her face, her apron were splattered with dark, dripping red. "Blood!" Seidel Pulowski cried, clutching her heart. "Don't just sit there," Catherine Theodoricus shouted. "Somebody call the fire department." Angela hurried to the payphone on the wall and stood there trembling, not knowing whether to call or not. They were snowbound. The fire engines could not reach Sunset Towers. Theo leaned through the kitchen doorway. "Everything's okay. There's no fire." "Chris, honey, it's all right," Mrs. Theodoricus said, kneeling before the wheelchair. "It's all right, Chris. Look, it's just tomato sauce." Tomato sauce. Mrs. Theodoricus was covered with tomato sauce, not blood. The curious heirs now piled into the kitchen, except for Seidel Pulowski, who slumped to the counter. She could have a heart attack and no one would notice. Mr. Hu surveyed the scene, trying to conceal his delight. "What a mess," he said. "That row of cans must have exploded from the heat of the stove." The entire kitchen was splattered with tomato sauce and soaked in foam from the fire extinguishers. What a mess. George Theodoricus regarded him with suspicion. It was a bomb. Catherine Theodoricus thought so too. There was hissing, then bang, bang, sparks flying all over the kitchen, red sparks, purple sparks. "Cans of tomato sauce exploded," Doug Hu said, defending his father. The others agreed. Mrs. Theodoricus was understandably hysterical. A bomb? Ridiculous. Sam Westing certainly did not appear to have been killed by a bomb. Judge Ford suggested that the accident be reported to the police immediately in order to collect on the insurance. "You might as well redecorate the entire kitchen," Grace Wexler, decorator, proposed. "It should be functional yet attractive, with lots of copper pots hanging from the ceiling." "I don't think there's any real damage," Catherine Theodoricus replied, "but we'll have to close for a few days to clean up." Mr. Hu smiled. Angela offered to help. "Angela, dear, you have a fitting this afternoon," Grace reminded her, "and we have so much to do for the wedding shower on Saturday." In thumped Seidel Pulowski. "I'm fine now, just a bit woozy. Goodness, what a nasty turn." Having recovered from the nasty turn, Seidel Pulowski settled down to transcribing her shorthand to Polish, then from Polish to English. Startled by loud banging on her apartment door, she struck the wrong typewriter key. "Open up!" Recognizing the voice, Angela unbolted the door to a furious Turtle. "All right, Angela, where is it?" "What?" "The newspaper you took from my desk." Angela carefully dug through the embroidery, personal items, and other paraphernalia in her tapestry bag, and pulled out the newspaper folded to the Westing obituary. "I'm sorry, Turtle, I would have asked for it, but you weren't around." "You don't also happen to have my Mickey Mouse clock in there, too, do you?" Turtle softened on seeing her sister's hurt expression. "I'm only kidding. You left your engagement ring on the sink again. Better go get it before somebody steals that, too." "Oh, I wouldn't worry about anyone stealing Angela's ring," Seidel Pulowski remarked. "No mother would stoop that low." The thought of Grace being the burglar was so funny to Turtle, she plopped down on the sofa and rolled about in laughter. It felt good to laugh. The stock market had fallen 5 points today. "Angela, please tell your sister to get her dirty shoes off my couch. Tell her to sit up and act like a lady." Turtle rose with a tongue click very much like her mother's, but she was not about to leave without striking back. Arms folded, she leaned against the wall and let them have it. "Mom thinks Angela was the one who stole the shorthand notebook." That got them. Look at those open mouths. Because Mom asked to see it, and Angela does everything she says. Anyone could have stolen my notebook. I didn't double lock my door that day. If Seidel couldn't trust her own partner, she was alone. All alone. "Did Mom really say that?" Angela asked. "No, but I know how she thinks. I know what everybody thinks. Grown-ups are so obvious." "Ridiculous," scoffed Seidel. "For instance, I know that Angela doesn't want to marry that sappy intern." "Ridiculous. You're just jealous of your sister." "Maybe," Turtle had to admit, "but I am what I am. I don't need a crutch to get attention." Oh, she had gone too far. "Turtle didn't mean it that way, Seidel," Angela said quickly. "She used the word crutch as a symbol. She meant, that people are so afraid of revealing their true selves they have to hide behind some sort of prop." "Oh, really?" Seidel replied. "Then Turtle's crutch is her big mouth." "No," Angela thought, hurrying her sister out of the door and back to their apartment. "Turtle's crutch is her braid." The newspaperman called again to say he had found some photographs taken at Westingtown parties 20 years ago. One of those names appears in a caption as Violet Westing's escort, George Theodoricus. "Go on," the judge said. "That's all." He promised to send her the clippings in the Westing file as soon as he was shoveled out. The judge now knew of 4 heirs with Westing connections: James Hu, the inventor, Theo's father, her partner Sandy McSuthers, who'd been fired from the Westing paper mill, and herself. But she had to learn more, much more, about each one of the heirs if she hoped to protect the victim of Sam Westing's revenge. She would have to hire a detective, a very private detective, who had not been associated with her in her practice or in the courts. J.J. Ford flipped through the yellow pages to investigators, private. Good grief, her fingers stopped near the top of the list. Was it a coincidence or dumb luck? Or was she playing right into Sam Westing's hand? No choice but to chance it. The judge dialed the number and tapped her foot impatiently, waiting for an answer. "Hello, if you're looking for a snowbound private investigator, you've got the right number." Yes, she had the right number. It may be a trick, but it was no coincidence. The voices were one and the same. Chapter 13, The Second Bomb. No one was in the kitchen of Shinhu's restaurant when the bombers set a tall can labeled monosodium glutamate behind similar cans on a shelf. The color-striped candle would burn down to the fuse at 6:30. Whoever was working there would be on the other side of the room. No one would be hurt. Due to the unfortunate damage to the coffee shop, Shinhu's restaurant is prepared to satisfy all dinner accommodations. Order down or ride up to the 5th floor. Treat your taste buds to a scrumptious meal while feasting your eyes on the stunning snowscape before it melts away. Reasonable prices, too. Grace Wexler tacked her sign to the elevator wall as she rode up to her new job. She was going to be the seating hostess. "Where's the cook?" Mr. Hu shouted, meaning his wife. He found Madame Hu in their rear 4th-floor apartment kneeling before her bamboo trunk, fingering mementos from her childhood in China. He hurried her up to the kitchen, too harried to find the words that would explain what was happening. Now, where was that lazy son of his? Doug jogged in from a tiring workout on the stairs. How was he supposed to know the restaurant would open early? Nobody bothered telling him. "Some student you are. Anyone with the brain of an anteater could have figured that out. People are short of food. The coffee shop is closed for repairs. Stop arguing, go take a shower, and put on your busboy outfit. Get moving." "Don't you think you're rather hard on the boy?" Grace commented. "Somebody's got to give him a shove. If he had his way, he'd do nothing but run," Hu replied between bites of chocolate. "You're not so easy on Angela, either." "Angela? Angela was born good, the perfect child. As for the other one, well..." "It's not easy being a parent," Hu said woefully. "You can say that again." Grace held her breath. Her husband would have done just that. Said it again. But Mr. Hu only nodded in shared sympathy. What a gentleman. Only Mr. and Mrs. Theodoricus ordered down. The other tenants of Sunset Towers lined up at the reservations desk, waiting for Grace Windsor Wexler to lead the way. Oversized menus clutched in her arms, Grace felt the first proud stirrings of power rush up from her pedicured toes to the very top curl on her head. If Uncle Sam could pair off people, so could she. "You see your brother every day, Chris. How about eating with someone else for a change?" She wheeled the boy to a window table without waiting for an answer. It would have been yes. The two cripples together, Seidel Pulowski thought. She'd show that high and mighty hostess. She'd show them all. She and Chris could have private jokes too, and everybody would be sorry they weren't sitting with them. "What's moogoon?" Chris asked, baffled by the strange words on the menu. "I think it's boiled grasshopper." Seidel screwed up her face and Chris laughed. "Or chocolate-covered mousse." "French fried mousse," Chris offered. Now Seidel laughed. They both laughed heartily, but no one envied them. "Your brother seems to be enjoying Miss Pulowski." Theo nodded, awed by the beautiful Angela, 3 years older than he, so fair-skinned and blonde, so unattainable. Here he was sitting at the very same table with her, just the two of them, and he couldn't think of a single thing to say that wasn't stupid or childishly stupid. Usually the quiet one, Angela tried again. "Are you planning to go to college next year?" Theo nodded, then shook his head. "Say something, idiot." "I got a scholarship to Madison, but I'm not going. I'm going to work instead." What big, worried, sky-blue eyes. The operation for Chris will be very expensive. That was worse. Now she's feeling sorry for him. If Chris had been born that way, maybe it wouldn't be so bad, but he was a perfectly normal kid. A great kid. And he's smart, too. About 4 years ago, he started to get clumsy. Just little things at first. Perhaps my fiancé can help. Angela bit her lip. Theo was not asking for charity. And fiancé, what an old-fashioned, silly word. I went to college for a year. I wanted to be a doctor, but, well, we don't have as much money as my mother pretends. Dad said he could manage if that's what I really wanted, but my mother said it was too difficult for a woman to get into medical school. Why was she gabbing like this? I want to be a writer, Theo said. That really sounded like kid stuff. Would you go back to college if you won the inheritance? Angela looked down. It was a question she did not want to answer, or could not answer. Long before becoming a judge, Josie Joe Ford had decided to stop smiling. Smiling without good reason was demeaning. A serious face put the smiler on the defensive. A rare smile put a nervous witness at ease. She now bestowed one of her rare smiles on the dressmaker. I'm so glad we have this chance to become acquainted, Mrs. Baumbach. I had so little time to chat with my guests last night. It was a wonderful party. Flora Baumbach appeared even smaller and rounder than she was as she sat twisting her napkin with hands accustomed to being busy. Was her face permanently creased from years of pleasing customers, or was a tragedy lurking behind that grin? Have you always specialized in wedding gowns? Mr. Baumbach and I had a shop for many years. Baumbach's for the bride and groom. Perhaps you've heard of it? I'm afraid not. The judge would have said no in any case to keep her witness talking. Perhaps you've heard of Flora's bridal gowns? That's what I called my shop after my husband left. I don't know much about groom's clothes. They're mostly rentals anyway. Flora Baumbach lost her timidity. The judge let her chat away. I'm using heirloom lace on the bodice of Angela's gown. It's been in my family for 3 generations. I wore it at my wedding, and I dreamed that someday I'd have a daughter who would wear it too. But Rosalie didn't come along until I was in my 40s, and the dressmaker stopped. Her lips tightened into an even wider grin. Angela will make such a beautiful bride. Funny how she reminds me of her. Angela reminds you of your daughter? The judge asked. Oh, my, no. Angela reminds me of another young girl I made a wedding dress for, Violet Westing. The heavy charms on Seidel Pulowski's bracelet clinked and clunked as she raised a full fork and flourished it in a practiced ritual before aiming it at her open mouth. Chris's movements were even jerkier. She's a good person, he thought, but she thinks too much about herself. Maybe she never had anybody to love. Here, let me help you to some of this delicious sweet and sour ostrich. Their laughter drowned out the loud groan from another table, where Turtle sat alone, a transistor radio plugged in her ear. The stock market had dropped another 12 points. I'm starved. Let's sit down to eat. Head held high, Grace Wexler led her husband across the restaurant. All I want is a corned beef sandwich, not a guided tour. Would you prefer to sit alone or with that young lady over there? I thought I was going to sit with you. Please be seated, Grace replied. Jimmy, Mr. Hu, will take your order shortly. Jake snatched the menu from his wife and watched her glide, gracefully, he had to admit, to the reservations desk and whisper in Hu's ear. Jimmy, she calls him. That's a fine kettle of fish, he exclaimed, then turned to his dinner companion. Fine kettle of fish. I'm so hungry even that sounds good, and from the looks of this menu, that's probably what I'll get. I'm okay, Turtle replied, the final prices of actively traded stocks tumbling in her ear. Mr. Hu waddled over. I recommend the striped bass. See, what did I tell you? A kettle of fish. Turtle switched off the radio. She had heard enough bad news for one day. How about spare ribs done to a crisp? Hu suggested. Then he lowered his voice. What's the point spread on the Packers game? See me later, Jake muttered. Go ahead and tell him, Daddy, Turtle said. I know you're a bookie. Can you stand on your legs? Seidel Pulowski asked. Can you walk at all? People never asked Chris those questions. They whispered them to his parents behind his back. No. Why? What better disguise for a thief or a murderer than a wheelchair? The perfect alibi. Chris enjoyed being taken for the criminal type. Now they were really friends. When you me notes. What? Oh, read you my notes. Soon. Very soon. Seidel daintily touched the corners of her mouth with the napkin, pushed back her chair, and grabbed her polka dot crutch. That was a superb meal. I must give my compliments to the chef. She rose, knocking the chair to the floor, and clumped toward the kitchen door. Where is she going? Angela starting to help her partner, was distracted by shouting in the corridor. "Hello in there, anybody home?" Through the restaurant door came a bundled and booted figure. He danced an elephantine jig, stomping snow on the carpet, flung a long woolen scarf from his neck, and yelled, "Otis Amber is here! The roads are clear!" That's when the bomb went off. "Nobody move! Everybody stay where you are!" Mr. Who shouted as he rushed into the sizzling, crackling kitchen. "Just a little mishap," Grace Wexler explained, taking her command post in the middle of the restaurant. "Nothing to worry about. Eat up before your food gets cold." A cluster of red sparks hissed through the swinging kitchen door, kissed the ceiling, and rained a shimmering shower down and around the petrified hostess. Fireflies of color faded into her honey blonde hair and scattered into ash at her feet. "Nothing to worry about," she repeated herself hoarsely. "Just celebrating the Chinese New Year," Otis Amber shouted, adding one of his he cackles. Mr. Who leaned through the kitchen doorway, his shiny, straight black hair, even shinier and straighter, plastered to his forehead, water dribbling down his moon-shaped face. "Call an ambulance. There's been a slight accident." Angela dashed past Mr. Who into the kitchen. Jake Wexler made the emergency telephone call and sent Theo to the lobby to direct the ambulance attendants. "Why are you standing there like a statue?" Who shouted at his son. "You told everybody to stay where they were," Doug said. "You're not everybody." Madame Who tried to make the injured woman as comfortable as possible on the debris-strewn floor. Angela found the sequin spectacles, wiped off the wet, crystalline mess, and placed them on her partner's nose. "Don't look so worried, Angela. I'm all right." Seidel was in pain, but she wanted attention on her own terms, not as a hapless, foolish victim of fate. "Looks like a fracture," an ambulance attendant said, feeling her right ankle. "Careful how you lift her." The secretary suppressed a grunt. It was bad enough being drenched by the overhead sprinkler and draped with noodles. Now they were carrying her right past them all. Grace pulled Angela away from the stretcher. "You can visit your friend in a few days." "Angela, Angela," Seidel moaned. Pride or not, she wanted her partner at her side. Angela stood between her determined mother and her distraught partner, paralyzed by the burden of choice. "Go with your friend, Angie Pye," Jake Wexler said. Other voices chimed in. "Go with Pulowski." Grace realized she had lost. "Perhaps you should go to the hospital, Angela. It's been so long since you've seen your Dr. D." She winked mischievously, but only Flora Baumbach smiled back. The policeman and the fire inspector visiting the scene agreed that it was nothing more than a gas explosion. Good thing the sprinkler system worked, or Mr. Who might have had a good fire. "What kind of fire is a good fire?" Who wanted to know. "And what about the burglaries?" Grace Wexler asked. "I'm with the bomb squad," the policeman explained. "You'll have to call the robbery detail for that." "And what about the coffee shop accident?" Theo asked. "Also a gas explosion." Jake Wexler asked about the odds of having 2 explosions in 2 days in the same building. "Nothing unusual," the fireman replied, "especially in weather like this. No ventilation, snow packed over the ducts." He instructed the tenants to air out their kitchens before lighting ovens. Mrs. Wexler turned up the heat in her apartment and kept the windows open for the next 3 days. She did not want anything blowing up during Angela's party. But the Wexler apartment was exactly where the bomber planned to set the next bomb. Alright, that is all that we have time for in this video, but I will see you guys tomorrow with our next part of the Westing game.